What is the big conspiracy in your opinion?
You know, the jury's still out, but as of today, the way I see the world is that it's not simple. And so in order to give this in a simple way, I'll try to like pare the understanding down to maybe a couple of spheres, as in what controls the world: money, power, people. Money is pretty clearly, you trace that rabbit hole up to the banks, up to the banking families. You know, that's a long storied history. It goes through things like the Rothschild banking family, which are still very much powerful to this day. The Rockefellers went in there, but it also comes to people like BlackRock. It goes to places like private equity. And a lot of that is extremely complicated on purpose, so it's hard for you to understand. But inevitably, it pretty much swirls up to a few people at the top having an insane amount of power to just manipulate incentives, not to directly instruct everyone what to do necessarily, but to incentivize behaviors that en masse.
They tried it with ESG and DEI and things like that.
BlackRock's a big part of pushing those. Then there's the world of power, and that involves a lot of religion. It involves a lot of politics, and obviously it also involves money and everything else. And the world of power, you start to trace politics up, and you kind of disperse into various powerful families, various organizations and NGOs like the World Economic Forum. A lot of this is stuff that Alex and your whole network, you guys talk about all the time, which is awesome because they're kind of constantly evolving new organizations, new corporations, new NGOs to be the new face of the world order, so to speak. And then so that's like money and it's like power. Well, and then I think the one thing that is most interesting to me that most people don't learn about in their regular lives is the black markets and sort of the criminal underbelly of the world. And I see that as including intelligence agencies, because intelligence agencies were essentially founded because the US government wanted to do things that they didn't want anyone to know about. That's the whole point of an intelligence agency, is to do covert operations, to do things that have a degree of separation. So if the operation gets exposed, hopefully the whole world doesn't find out that the CIA was directly linked to the guy that just tried to shoot Trump, for example. And so the covert intelligence agencies partnered with organized crime very early on, as I'm sure a lot of your viewers know, and they've been buddy-buddy ever since. And so understanding drug trafficking, arms trafficking, sex trafficking, and human trafficking, all of those criminal organizations, that is sort of the final bucket of what I see in all of these different sort of bases of power in the world. They work together, like blackmail in the black markets, that influences the politics and the money. The money over in the banking sector, that influences the politicians and the black, like they all interplay. And so they're inherently all aligned. And I think that there's different factions. You know, there seems to be, Trump has a lot of allies. He has a lot of people that he's, you know, powerful people that he's come up with and still supports and support him. And then there's clearly like a Democrat group that is, Lord knows what's connected to that. And I'm sure there's other international players too, like Russia is aligned somewhere, China is aligned somewhere. And so it's extremely complicated. But inherently, we're not on any of those teams. Except for me, like I want to hope, I want to believe that Trump and RFK have people around them that do have the people in mind. But it's important not to put anyone on a pedestal and not to pretend like billionaires are ever really going to be on our team. So,
well, I want to show the audience the overhead cam here, because as you were talking, I was kind of charting this out, and there's something first of all, I think that's one of the most brilliant responses that I could have ever heard from anyone in the history of the world at all. And I never thought of it like that, to actually tier it. You know, we think of checks and balances in the government, legislative, judicial, and executive branch. You think of the three arms of corruption. You've got money, power in the black market. And the thing that's interesting to me looking at this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, you've got the money here, power here, black market. The only way the money thing works is if people agree to take out loans and pay interest, right? Usury. Yeah. The only way that the power works is if the people put into power the wrong people because they're ignorant. And the only way the black market works is if people demand debauchery, whether it's sex trafficking or drugs, right? So if you have a moral people who are enlightened, who are not dependent on an unjust financial system, then all of these corrupt structures, the bedrock of corruption, just totally collapses. So the solution is for people to understand the truth versus the lies. It is the info war. I mean, we can't fix either of these from the top down. We have to attack from the bottom up, right?
You have put it so perfectly, Chase, because it really does come down to a war of good and evil. And exactly like you've just elucidated, in a world where debauchery and corruption and lies and our basest lustful human instincts are incentivized, then a black market concept in all those worlds, like a corrupt version of all of that, thrives. And everyone's incentivized to be corrupt because that's how you get to the top of all three of those systems. But in a world where good people stand up and take power for themselves and end all of that corruption, suddenly money is about a free market where we're cooperating, right? Suddenly politics and like the power structures of government are about us cooperating to create a better world. Suddenly the black market is no longer incentivized and instead the white markets are incentivized. And so you're so right that it's like all comes back to the core of our culture of what do we incentivize in our own moral fiber. And the more of us that look in our own hearts and establish a strong moral fiber of goodness, the more that radiates out into the more of us that can be good and incentivize within our own lives good structures and good morals, the more that the black markets of the darker versions of all this loses its power, right? Because it's only maintained by corrupt politicians being able to be put into power. You need corrupt people to do that. Corrupt bankers and financiers taking advantage of the monetary systems. You need corrupt people to do that. Corrupt arms traffickers, drugs traffickers, human traffickers. You need both the consumer and the trafficker for that to exist. And so the more of us that stand up to corruption and poor, evil, degenerate social morals, the more everything can start to change. Change starts from within.
And all these institutions have an incentive to debase the culture and the people. They want you all fucked up, basically. Right? And I'm sorry for the language there. We have a family audience. Ian Caroll, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the Alex Jones Show. Thank you so much for spending an hour with me.
Today's conspiracy theories, tomorrow's truths.
Some of these conspiracy theories have turned out to be true.
Which ones?
The Trump-Russia witch hunt, Jeffrey Epstein, JFK assassination, the misuse of the Patriot Act, the Iraq war, the weapons of mass destruction, the war in Ukraine, the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline, the open border migration caravans, the climate change scam, chemtrails, and HARP, and 9/11 being an inside job, and the Internet of Things surveillance grid, and PFAs, and chemicals in the water turning everyone gay, and the 2020 election being stolen, and January 6th being filled with undercover feds, and Bilderberg, and Bohemian Grove, and global government, not to mention gain-of-function research, and the threat of China, and collapsing birth rates, and defund the police, and George Soros, and mail-in ballots, and big tech censorship, and disinformation agencies, and Obama's birth certificate, and probably some others I can't think of. I mean, so a few of them. I guess a couple of them have been true.
You will meet so many amazing people wearing the shirt. I'd say you'll get probably 50 compliments before you get one person screaming at you.
Donald J. Trump is now president of the United States.
But it's an adventure to wear any of these shirts, but particularly this one. Get this design and so many others. They're limited edition at thealexjonestore.com. Keep us on air in our fight against the globalist. And I want to thank you so much for your support, because literally, when you call in thanking me on air, I say stop, because I'm thanking you. I love fighting the globalist. This is what I do. We've had such a huge effect together. So I want to thank you all for your past support. Encourage you now to go to thealexjonestore.com and be sure to enter for the free truck and $10,000 and buy more product, support the broadcast, and get entered 5 or 10 times, depending on the day, each time you buy a product. This new initiative is so important to the future. So everybody, if you support what we're doing and want to get great shirts and ball caps at the same time, go to thealexjonestore.com. And I almost forgot, most of these shirts come in multiple colors.